Hello and welcome to another edition of the Blind Truth podcast. And today, really excited. I know I always say that, but I genuinely am, to have with us as a guest Paul Boots Errock.
Thank you very much, Phil. It's a pleasure to be on your programme and on your podcast.
Yeah.
And as way of introduction,
Yeah.
I am the interim chair for Oldham East and Saddleworth and Oldham West, Chadderton and Royton. And I know we're sat here in Tameside,
Yeah.
and I think we've got some very precarious situation for both boroughs and our nation at large. I mean, my heart and soul lies firmly with Oldham Borough, but equally, it's concerning me a lot of boroughs up and down the country, what's going on.
Yeah.
As the nation's problems as well, which I think we're all getting finely tuned into just how catastrophic this government, and certainly the previous government was. I mean, the previous 14 years of the Tory government did the UK a lot of damage. They didn't deliver any of the promises. They let everybody down, and I think Labour government are just hell bent on bankrupting the country and just finishing it off.
I'm personally, I know this isn't about me, this podcast, but I'm genuinely baffled. Just to clarify, Paul, you're with the Reform UK party?
I am with the Reform UK, okay. And I'll tell you the tale how that came about. It goes back really locally where I live. There's a place that's very. How should I say? What's the word to describe it? It's a very much loved piece of countryside, wildlife habitat, and other protected open land, which is often they use the terminology opal land.
Right.
And some viewers might not understand what opal means, but it means other protected open land. It's basically having space for for people to have leisure in.
Sure.
And there was only one piece of land of its type that were left in the ward of Saddleworth West, Lees, Groton and Springhead, and it was called the Valley. And it was quite a cherished piece of land. So a lot of the residents in that area, of which I live very, very close by to it, and it's a beautiful part. There's migrating birds. I think they've got 28 different types of birds there. There's amphibians there. There's deer there. There's waterfalls there. People walk the dogs there. They ride horses there. Oldham Council decided they were going to build 256 houses on it. Right. Now, what the people of the area in Oldham Borough were annoyed about is that rather than building on brownfield, and nationally there's enough brownfield to build 1 million houses, there is absolutely no need to build on greenbelt or other protected open land or countryside or wildlife habitat. So all that is a myth. And it's done so to generate money, to generate income, because building houses on the wildlife habitat, on countryside, on other protected open land, is where it's going to raise the maximum rates and the maximum profit. Building on brownfield doesn't. What Oldham Council had done previous to allowing planning permission on the valley was they compulsory purchased probably the biggest stock of affordable houses in Durka and knocked them all down. And
compulsory purchase.
Compulsory purchase.
Wow.
So a place called Durka in Oldham, and I had many friends who lived there, and people who were setting off in life when they're trying to get on the housing ladder. I'm going back probably a decade ago, maybe a little bit more. But those houses at the time were probably you'd be able to buy one for about 50 to 80 grand. There were 2 up, 2 down. Durka were nice enough area. You got Durka Park round. It's pretty central, good for buzzes. There were plenty of pubs there, plenty of things for kids to do. And they compulsory purchased and gave a lot of the owners of those houses a pittance. Certainly not enough money that they could go and buy something else with the money that was given.
Wow.
And it would. I think it was just an idiotic decision. And a lot of those people ended up homeless. It broke up a community. And they did the same in a ward in Oldham that is known. The ward name is Medlock Vale, and part of Medlock Vale is an area called Fitton. Now, I know Fitton really well because my gran and granddad lived there. Right. My Uncle Jack and Auntie Nellie, my Auntie Kat lived on Fitton. So I remember playing there as a kid. So I remember Fitnell really, really well. And what they've done is they've compulsory purchased a load of houses on Fitnell, hundreds of houses, and they knocked them down. And they didn't rebuild any there.
So they just left it flat?
Just left it flat. And you know, and all the infrastructure were in, you know, your gas, your electric, your service, sewerage and all that.
Wow.
Which is a massive cost. So, you know, the Oldham Council then starts eyeing up the Greenbelt land, and they looked at sort of various areas around our borough, and I know Tameside have got the same problem. But in our borough, you've got like an area called Shaw, and you've got a group of people trying to save Shaw Greenbelt. We've got a ward called Royton. There's Royton North and Royton South, and you've got Save Royton Greenbelt. Fitnell have got some nice areas which they're trying to build on. Same down at Failsworth. But all these areas they're unpicking because that is what is going to maximise revenue. Nothing to do with, you know, these same people in the same breath said they're trying to save the environment. And that they care about the environment, they care about pollution. It's just absolute rubbish. So, you know, I just turned my phone off. It's buzzing away. So, yeah. So
what
I got
him revenue for?
So just bear with me a second. I actually sort of got involved, and we all started a campaign, just of a community group, and it was literally initially it was politically neutral. So people from, you know, the Tories, the Lib Dems, you know, the Independents, they all joined in. And the only way that we could actually save the valley was by a judicial review, which was something I didn't know on the outset.
Right.
The problem with a judicial review is you've got to fund it. So you turn into the community, and the funding we were given a quotation from Irwin Mitchell solicitors of £50,000. So we got involved in a lot of local events. We had a party at the Pavilion, got bands to play for, you know, for free in case we had an orchestra turn up to play for us. We had quiz nights, and I came up with this idea of the 200 Club, and the idea of the 200 Club are the 200 people in Oldham that are prepared to give 100 quid each, and to be part of the 200 Club to save the valley. And more than 200 did, and that one idea alone raised £20,000.
Right.
So we did get the £50,000. We had the judicial review, and of course all the politics jumped on the back of it. So they all wanted to get on the bandwagon, and they all wanted to claim the glory after the work were done.
Without raising any money themselves.
They didn't. You know, the Lib Dems did nothing, Tories did nothing. Labour had already given them the planning permission. So, you know, and then of course when we raised the 50 grand, you had all the local councillors wanting the photo opportunities of, like, you know, and take the glory and say how concerned they were. They weren't concerned enough to actually even put a post up on the local pages to try and raise any money. So out of that, I spoke to a councillor called by the name of Stephen Hewitt. He was a local Labour councillor, nice chap. I really liked Steve. He's a good man. And I asked him why all the Labour councillors in Oldham voted this through when you and I know many of them don't want it to go through. And Steve Hewitt explained to me because of the whip. So I said to him, explain to me, Stephen, in layman's terms, what do you mean by the whip? He said, well, it means that your party executive or the cabinet, when they tell you what you've got to vote for, you either vote for that or effectively sacked. And if you're sacked and you get thrown out of the party or have the whip removed, it basically can destroy your career. And many career politicians are frightened to death of having the whip removed because by having the whip removed, it means that in some instances, in many instances, those people are out of work. So they've got their own livelihoods to consider, the families to consider. So it's a very serious sword of Damocles that dangles over a lot of the main political party members' head. And so I said to Stephen Hewitt, so you following the whip? I said, what happens if you go against the whip? He said, they'll throw me out. So he went against the whip and they threw him out. So,
a la Rupert Lowe.
Rupert Lowe. And so with what Stephen Hewitt and I had a discussion about, I said to him, why don't you start a party with no whip? And his response to me was, why don't you? So that was basically the baptism of fire for me, because that's how I got involved in politics. I'm 65 now. I was in my late 50s when that happened. So 57, 58, maybe 59-year-old. And up until that time in my life, like so many millions of others in the country, I took a passing interest in politics. It didn't really it wasn't the first thing on my agenda. Throughout my adult life, you know, I was very much into motorbikes, into music, playing guitar, being in bands, touring, travel. I boxed amateur for 20 years. Never that much good at it, if I'm brutally honest.
Me and you both.
But I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the camaraderie, and I met a lot of great people, and still stay in contact with many of them.
And self-discipline and training.
And so that was pretty much so. Throughout my life, I mean, certainly from a very early age, I recall speaking with my gran and granddad and my mum and dad, and they were regaling, you know, tales of what happened during the Second World War and what it was all about, and I took great interest. And I had this overwhelming duty from day one that I think it's very, very important to vote. And it doesn't matter who you vote for, but I think you should always vote. I mean, I think in Australia it's compulsory.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, but in the UK, I mean, I think one of the reasons we're in such a mess is people don't vote. Now, I've always voted, not always for the best of reasons, because in 1978, when I was a young lad, I was 18-year-old, and on my birthday, I actually received a birthday card for a chap called Richard Wainwright. Now, Richard Wainwright was unknown to me at the time. It turned out he was a local Liberal MP. Based on him sending me a birthday card, I voted for him. So that was my baptism of voting. And as the years have rolled on, you know, there's been various reasons why I've voted particular ways. As we were talking earlier before we started broadcasting, in a past life I was a lead singer in the Million Billion Band, which was great fun. Yeah. And we toured about a lot, and we did Atlantic soul music. And we were doing it before the film The Commitments came along. So as I remember, there was a newspaper article saying the Million Billion Band were the North's answer to the film The Commitments. And my response to it, I said, no. I said The Commitments was the film industry's answer to us, because we were doing it first. But so, you know, I got involved with the Million Billion Band, and that was a great period of my life. And I have now lost my drift.
It's all right.
However, I now got the drift back. So I was gigging with the Million Billion Band, and we did this one particular gig at a place called Crowther's Barn, and it was very well attended, and it was a very party atmosphere. We used to sell out a lot of places. And a chap after the gig come up to me, he said, "Boots," he said, "do us a favour, will you?" He said, "the next election," he said, "will you vote for me dad?" I said, "Who's your dad?" He said, "He's called Geoffrey Dickens." So I said, "Which party does he stand for?" He said, "He stands for the Conservatives." Based on that conversation, I voted for Geoffrey Dickens because his son, Clive, after a gig, asked me to. So that was about how much attention I was paying in politics. Yeah,
it's all about with the birthday card, isn't it? Yeah.
A bit like the birthday card, yeah. But one of my lifetime long friends is a lovely man. I'm sort of very proud to call him one of my best friends in the world. He's a guy called Dr. Rory Brown. And he and I have been friends since we were at school. Right. So I think we first met when we were sort of 12, 13-year-old. And we're still best mates now. Yeah. I was out with him last weekend. And me and him were having a chat, and we were having a talk about politics. He's sort of been very influential with me. He's been he was an avid Labour supporter for many years, decades. He and I were having a conversation. He said, during the next general election, who are you going to vote for? I said, I don't know. I'm not really taking much interest in it, which I hadn't. Yeah. And he said, would you vote for Phil Willis? And I said, yeah, okay. Based on Rory Brown, my best mate, asking me to vote for Phil Willis. Yeah. That was the reason I voted for Phil Willis. So, like I say, up until kind of got involved with the Valley, I didn't really sort of scratch the surface of what these parties were all about and what they were doing. And then we formed what was called Proud of Oldham and Saddleworth, which was our sort of, I said, baptism into politics. And my goodness, what a sharp learning curve, because they come after you like wolves, and it's not for the faint-hearted. We sort of gathered quite a following pretty quickly. The Liberal Democrats came and attacked us, viciously. Really, they burned the teeth at us. They were sort of, really upset with the fact that, we were gaining a lot of support. And what they did was, we had a WhatsApp group for the valleys where all the people who were supposed to be politically neutral were exchanging messages about, Irwin Mitchell and trying to save the valley. Next news, we saw some Liberal Democrat councillors appear on that WhatsApp group, and I turned to my colleague Sarah Shilton and I said to her, right, here we go, they're going to politicise it. And sure enough, the next news, Sarah Shilton, who was our chairwoman, she was booted off it. And then her husband, who was a candidate for her, she was booted off it. They didn't boot me off, and then, I turned round and said, look, if you're turning this into some political sort of mandate, I'm going to leave. There was also the Groton Residents Association, and the Liberal Democrats got themselves embedded in that. Again, it was supposed to be politically neutral. Right. And I would turn up at meetings, and they were just basically promoting the Lib Dems locally.
I was going to say, is there such a thing as politically neutral?
Well, at the time, I was naive and thought there was. And what I was really, really sort of cheesed off with the Liberal Democrats was, I don't know if you recall, under the leadership of, good grief, what was he called? He formed a coalition government with David Cameron, the Liberal leader. What was his name?
Clegg,
yeah. So, under the leadership of Clegg, he promised that he was going to get rid of student fees. Now, I have a very strong feeling about getting rid of student fees, and it stems basically, which affects millions of people, is that when you're starting off in life, Phil, and we've all been there, you struggle. You struggle to make ends meet, and when you're setting off in life, I pay my taxes, and I don't mind paying for education. I don't mind paying for health, the police, the fire station, the ambulance, stuff like that, and the infrastructure. I don't think people really mind. It's when money's wasted that
misappropriated,
completely misappropriated, which we'll come to in a minute. But, however, Lib Dems under Nick Clegg, his name sort of Nick Clegg. He promised that if you voted for Lib Dems at that election, they were going to scrap student fees. Now, I had a strong opinion on that, and still do. I don't believe that if saddling people off when they're starting off in life with a whopping debt, 70, 80, 90,000 pounds worth of debt, and they get the qualifications, and they're just entering sort of the arena of work, and they've got that debt. Many of them suffer from anxiety, stress, depression. You can't build a society on that. You can't start people off in their lives with a great big millstone around their neck. And some of them, even the worst cases, get suicidal over the fact that they're just in a mountain of debt.
Oh yeah, my daughter, who you've just met, she's just got a degree and she's left with a huge debt.
Well, and I just think, in this day and age, and people pay their taxes, to try to create a fairer society. So I was absolutely sold. Yeah. And so I voted Lib Dems based on that one policy. I voted for Lib Dems. So they formed a coalition government with the Conservatives, with David Cameron, and they put them up. And I was incensed. I was absolutely furious. I was incensed that they told such blatant lies. Absolute liars. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And then, adding sort of like a layer on top of that was, the debacle that was Sir Cyril Smith.
Uh-huh.
Now, Sir Cyril Smith, when he was, how should I say, knighted, the emails that were passed about internally, I think penultimately ended up with David Steele's resignation. Cyril Smith was accused of
paedophilia.
Paedophilia at an orphanages in Rochdale, which was where he was an MP. Now, I took some phone calls while I was sort of representing the Valley, Save Our Valleys, and I was getting loads and loads of phone calls because I was chairing it.
Yeah.
And took a phone call one night, and I was like, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute into the conversation, I thought, what is this chap going on about? I was sort of perplexed, thinking, I'm not really following his drift here, because I'm thinking saving the valleys, and then the penny dropped. It was one of Cyril Smith's victims.
Yeah, just put that a little bit nearer to you, mate.
It was one of Cyril Smith's victims. It was. It was. How's that? You hear me?
Because you're sitting back, it's miles away.
Right, okay. Well, it was one of Cyril Smith's victims, and he told me in graphic detail what he'd done to him. And he was like, from like 9, 10, 11-year-old child who had parents who were drug addicts. He ended up in orphanage through no fault of his own. You're in the most vulnerable position that society can put you in, and you've got an MP going in there for the sexual gratification.
Was that ever proven, that?
Well, I mean, Channel 4 did a documentary, but due to his timely death, I think they had about 90 charges. I've had two of his victims who told me in great detail what he did, and I was just disgusted. And I'm, on podcasts such as this, on broadcasts such as this, I don't even want to sort of repeat what he did, but
no, of course not.
Just imagine in your mind's eye an adult man, but to a 9, 10, 11-year-old child, and he had them performing fellatio on him, but they told me in detail. So the level of disgust I had, and again, he was a Liberal Democrat, and then over in Oldham Borough, there was a chap who's currently the leader of the Liberal Democrats, a chap called Howard Sykes. When Cyril Smith died, he had all these allegations that were sort of bubbling around. He led the tributes to him. Now, to me, it's like leading the tributes to Jimmy Savile when you know what he's done. And I looked upon that in disbelief. Now, I have a personal friend who I've known a long time, who was a member of the Liberal Democrats in Oldham. Nice chap, and I really like the guy. I don't think he's never done me any harm, and as much as I don't like the Liberal Democrats, I do like a chap called Chris Gloucester. He was a councillor for Shaw in Oldham. Right. Now, Chris approached me and said, would I be interested in joining the Liberal Democrats? And I told him why I wouldn't. And I've just explained to you why I wouldn't. Yeah. But the next news, I had the Labour Party coming on to me, asking me if I'd join them. And I said to the Labour Party executive in Manchester, then they contacted me. It was 3 ladies at the time, can't recall the names, but they asked me if I would join the Labour Party, and I said, when the Labour Party came into being in, I think it was 1900 that Labour Party came into that. You looked at the values they had at the time. They were looking after the working class people who were
working class,
and I had a lot of those values inbuilt into me as a young man, and thought, if they still had them values, I'd be in the Labour Party in a heartbeat. And my response to them is they've lost the moral compass. I don't even know who it is they're supposed to be representing other than themselves. And they all seem to have the snouts in the trough, and they don't give a two hoots about the people that they purport to represent. And then the next news, after getting contacted by the Labour Party, I was then contacted by the Tories. And I was asked to stand as an MP for Oldham East and Saddleworth, off the record, for the Tories. I told them no, and again I told them in no uncertain terms why. I said, I don't think, because I'm going back a few years, I said, I don't think in 18 months' time Boris Johnson's going to be a leader. I said, I think he's just going to implode.
Yeah.
You've let everybody down. You've not delivered Brexit. People voted for you on the Brexit vote because they said that's what they wanted you to do. You had an 80-seat majority. You said you were going to stop the illegal immigration and you were going to get it under control. And I think the Tories let everybody down. And it wasn't a party that I could hand on heart, put my heart and soul into and sort of try and become part of something I didn't believe in. So, I plodded on with the independent flag, and I was very, very enthused by a lot of passionate people in Oldham Borough. And you had sort of the Fieldsworth Independent Party, who I thought did a great job. And we were networking with them and promoting them on our social media page. And you had the Coldest Independent Party. And then you had Shaw Independent Party, Wrighton Independent Party, Oldham Arts, and then you had Oldham Independent Group. And of course, I got sort of quite involved with most of them and was promoting them on our social media site. And in May 2024, I think it was 16 were voted in total. And I thought, wow, we've done it. When we set off in 2019, Oldham Council had 45 Labour councillors out of a maximum of 60, so they seemed immovable. I remember Stephen Hewitt saying to me, to rid Oldham of a Labour-run Oldham Council, using his terminology, was impossible. And so we achieved what I thought was impossible, because after the May 2024 elections, they were down to 27 out of 60. And I was sort of punching the air and thought, we've done it, done it. We've removed the Labour power in Oldham. Great stuff. We can now have a look at the accounts. We can deal with child sex exploitation that's been left. And then, lo and behold, I attended a meeting, which I was asked to chair, of the independents. And unfortunately, the independents had internal sort of squabbles. And I believe Mark Ince had a similar sort of opinion I had of Howard Sykes. He's not the person who I've got high regard for. And Mark Ince literally could not work with Howard Sykes as the leader. My hope and prayer was that Mark Ince would abstain. He didn't. Him and Lisa Naves, who were Shaw Independents, propped up the Labour Party, and then Brian Orbin and Neil Hindle from Fieldsworth Independents also propped up the Labour Party. So we've now got a minority Labour-run council where these 4 independents, who the people who voted for them, after they made promises that they wouldn't do deals with the Labour Party, did a deal with the Labour Party. And so I found myself once again in political wilderness, thinking, where do I go from here? Because, I've thrown my heart and soul into this for the past 5 years. And I just thought, I think my position now of trying to sort of champion the independent cause in Oldham Borough is untenable. So what I did on our social media platform, at the time we had about 8,000 members following us, and we were in limbo. And so I thought, I'm going to word a poll as neutrally as I possibly can. And the poll basically said, look, what do we do with this group? Because there's 8,000 of you that have come on this journey with us so far. And with basically 4 options. You've got the Lib Dems, Labour, Tories, or Reform UK. Because I'm not continuing with the independents. I put a podcast up. And I said, whatever the vote is, that's where we'll go. And so I put the poll up, and 92% of the people who did vote, and unfortunately not many voted. At the 8,000, I think about 200 voted.
Oh, bloody hell, that's too small.
So and the thing were, I said to everybody, look, how can we be blamed?
So were they that interested, really, if that's the case?
I've just put my head down. I was just so despondent,
Oh,
thinking,
yeah.
you know, we've done all
Yeah.
this work, and there's 8,000 followers, and like
That'll take the wind out of your sails for sure, won't it?
200 voted, but they voted for Reform. I was then contacted by Reform. They did ask me to actually stand in the general election, but they asked me the day after I put my card in to stand as independent.
Right.
I know standing as an independent, particularly in Oldham East and Saddleworth, was quite a symbolic gesture. I'm not delusional, you know. I know exactly that.
You're not going to make a difference, are you?
No, but it just I think it was more of a protest vote. It allowed people, because there were a lot of spoiled cards at polling time. You know, there's a lot of people despondent with the three main parties.
Yeah.
You know, was dreading what the Labour Party was going to do. I think the Tories had gone into free fall. Reform had not got their act together. They'd not really sort of, you know, become fully established. They were just getting themselves off the ground, and bang, a general election gets called. I put my papers in to stand as an independent. I had a committee around me, had good friends who'd been with us from day one, and literally 24 hours after I put them papers in, Reform contacted me and said, would I stand as the candidate for Oldham East and Saddleworth in the last general election? And I said, I can't. You know, I just, you know, hand on heart, as much as I'd want to do, I cannot sort of do something without due consideration, with getting all the committee, and of course the 8,000 followers behind me.
You'd have been an MP now, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think I would have won it.
On that note, Paul, let me ask you a question.
Sure, fire away.
And it's more national than local.
Yeah.
Obviously, what's going on with Rupert Law.
Yeah.
Where do you stand with that? Feel free to not answer if it's
No. I think not answering is not an option. I think people are.
Fair enough.
And to sort of coin a phrase and without sort of swearing, as I don't like to profanicate when we're broadcasting, like don't mind when the cameras are switched off.
You're free to swear from it, but whatever.
No, it's not my modus operandi.
Fair enough.
But I think politicians should answer, and when you're asked a question, you should answer.
I agree with you. But,
and so on the Rupert Law situation, I heard in December 2024 that there'd been a report to the police about Rupert Law.
Really? So that's true then?
There would be in December, that's what I heard.
Because that's one of the things that Nigel Farage has said, isn't it? That it isn't just because he's questioned him.
Yeah.
This was ongoing anyway. But
I mean, and again, you've got to understand, it was late November 2024 when I was approached to be the interim chair of Reform. And bear in mind, they approached me, not the other way around.
Right.
So, you know, they're keeping the eyes on. And when I was speaking to Reform UK, I was pretty impressed at just how much they knew about Oldham. They'd really done their homework.
Right.
You know, they knew how all the players were. They knew what had been going on. They really knew sort of all the characters that were in the political game.
George Galloway, for example, he's there, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I had there was a nice lady, actually, I quite like her. She's called Shanaz Sadiq. She stood for the Workers' Party, and Shanaz and I, we did a podcast before the general election, and we invited everybody to turn up, and they chickened out. You know, and it was a case of like sitting in front of the public, which we did, which Shanaz and I did, and just said, ask us any question you want, we'll answer it, you know. And that's what...
Would she come on here, do you think?
I think she would. I think you know, we've got our political differences, Shanaz and I, but I respect her. You know, she's a fighter. And she's represented George Galloway's party. Right. So, of course, Reform UK knew all about all of this that was going on in the background. They knew about Proud of Oldham and Saddleworth. They knew about the Lib Dems, the Labour, the Tories, and all the sort of pressure groups that were in and around Oldham. It was, how should I say, it was enlightening to know that they've been watching everything. And so I got approached to be the interim chair. I spoke to the committee, and I said, you know, the committee I've been working with in Proud of Oldham and Saddleworth, and they all agreed that, you know, moving forward with the independents had been effectively blown out the water because of the 4 independents who jumped ship. So it wasn't something I particularly had the appetite to continue with. It become, as I say, untenable. Yeah. So of the options, we moved forward with Reform UK. So that was late November 2024. So early December 2024, I'm sort of trying to put a committee together of the group secretary, a treasurer, a campaign manager, and a deputy chair in Reform. And I got I had login details for the Reform platform. So all of a sudden I'm on what's called the Nation Builder platform of Reform, and my goodness, it just went to the stratosphere. It was like a whole different ball game. A whole different ball game. I had a lot to learn very quick, but in life I've had to be a sharp learner, and it's a sharp learning curve. So you've got to understand, against that background, I am being bombarded. Obviously, since early December, the podcasts have been putting up, as we were talking about earlier. Just to give it a bit of context, I've had 600,000 views. Our Reform UK social media Facebook page has gone to 250,000 views. Right. So to say I'm getting a volume of messages would be an understatement, as well as emails. I mean, I just literally, it just overwhelms you. You're just thinking like, oh my God, that's like, what have I took on here? Because it just overwhelms you. So in that context, amongst lots and lots of other information I'm gathering, I'm trying to put Reform UK together for Oldham. I get information that Rupert Law had been reported to the police.
This is in December.
Right. Early December.
Right, well that's relevant, isn't it?
And I knew, and I'll be honest with you, I took not a blind bit of notice of it. I just thought it'll blow over. It's just one of those things, and then
they look like they're about to implode now.
I sort of like I looked at the time, didn't pay it any significance. I just sort of got my head down into what I needed to do in the borough. And then just saw, this is just blown up. Now I don't know the ins and outs of, who's reported into the police, why he got reported to the police. All I know, it started in December last year. And so moving into like the Christmas break again, it kind of put a lot of things on pause. Straight after the Christmas break, bang, straight back into it with Reform UK. Trying to get things set up. We're trying to get meetings set up, committee meetings set up, public meetings set up. Every man and his dog wanted to sort of meet you, talk to you, find out what's going on. We were getting applications for candidates. We've got 20 wards. Currently we've got 30, I think it's 38 applications to be candidates at the moment. And we're networking then with the chairs of all the other boroughs up and down the UK. There were national conferences going on, and it was quite, as I say, quite overwhelming. I had my head in other things, and then boom, this Rupert Law thing kicks off, and then I started. How should I say? Looking over my shoulder and thinking, what's just happened here? And I'm now sort of playing catch up as to trying to find out what on earth has gone on. I know that Rupert Law had an interview in the Daily, I think it was the Daily Mail, with Andrew Pearce, and again that was, from what I can gather, quite a toxic interview, and then things just seem to unravel from that. But I've personally not got the information of what the nature of the reports to the police have been. I don't know the ins and outs of what's happened to the party. I've not got myself. The telephone box is falling on me.
Let's just cut there. I've been watching that because it's been, and I'm thinking, right. Just bear with us a second.
So I'm not really. I'm to some degree, Phil. I'm actually playing catch up. I tell you what, you need to get one of them. They call them green walls at the back, where you can put a green wall and then superimpose Big Ben on the back for filming purposes. I went to a studio in Oldham where they had the green wall.
Yeah, we've got one in the other room.
Yeah, and they could.
People prefer this.
Yeah, I suppose it's sort of a horses for courses, but yeah, like I said, so like many people, I'm very much playing catch up on events as they unfold. And of course, you know, we had the public meeting last Monday, and obviously the topic of Rupert Law came up.
Yeah,
and we had the regional director came, and he answered the question, and he said, you know, it will, you know, it'll sort itself out one way or the other. He said, but notwithstanding what's happened with Rupert Law, what Paul Nuttall said, who's the regional director of Reform UK, he said that he got involved in UKIP, and the driving force behind UKIP was Nigel Farage. He said, make no mistake, the only way Reform UK are in the position they're in now
because of Nigel Farage.
Is because of Nigel Farage.
100% agree. Yeah.
And you know, he's a charismatic man, he's a talisman, and he's celebrity. That is where Reform UK has got its MPs elected from, effectively.
Yeah, have you seen his statement this morning, by the way?
No, I've not seen his statement this morning.
The headline was "No way back for Rupert to the Reform UK party."
I didn't know that, and I've not seen it.
He's finished with it, he said. He's not coming back.
Well, you know, like I say, it's unfortunate, but politics, as I was explaining to you in the introduction, it's you need square shoulders for it, because in politics, you know, you get battered and bruised about a bit. And like I say, when I first entered the arena, I didn't realise it was so toxic, because, you know, as soon as you don't agree with somebody else's political opinion,
you're the enemy.
You're the enemy. They set about you like wolves. And any chink in your armour, and
well, I don't know if you recall, many years ago, and this is one of the first. I've got a photographic memory, and this I was only a little kid, but do you know where the McDonald's Hotel is now, going towards London Road, going into town?
Yeah,
the Wiggly building.
Yes, yeah.
It used to be the BT building now, many years ago.
Right.
And I don't know why my mind took a picture of this, but it did. And at the time, there was a big, massive billboard. I think it was the Socialist magazine.
Yeah.
And there was a picture cut into three. And there was Neil Kinnock, Margaret Thatcher, and
I think I remember it.
And what's the Lib Dem guy? Paddy Ashdown.
No, I liked him.
I did. I've met him actually a couple of times. It's sadly no longer with us. Ex-SBS, by the way. So this thing was it was a huge sign, and underneath it said, "It's my party, and I'll lie if I want to."
Yeah, very true.
Well, and I thought it just says it all.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I heard an expression a couple of years ago, and it was like, the only time politicians tell the truth is when they call each other liars. And it's sort of, you know,
isn't that ironic?
Yeah, it is ironic, but. What I've attempted to do is try to put try to get Reform UK on the map in Oldham Borough, and it's no smart. You know, we're reaching out. Last Monday we had the meeting. We're reaching out to our members to help us. I mean, you can do it in many ways. You know, where they can sort of add members to the social media groups. You know, they can knock on doors for us. They can campaign for us. But we are in serious trouble right now. As a borough and as a nation, we are in very serious trouble.
Is that harking back to what you touched on it earlier about you going to suddenly get access to the accounts in Oldham Council and that?
Well, I did. I mean, I got access to the accounts, but I mean,
you uncovered some stuff, didn't you?
Yeah, I was sort of like, I looked at what's been going on in Oldham Borough, and I'm absolutely in shock at just how bad they are.
Really?
Really? You know, there was a lady called Sarah Johnson. Sarah Johnson joined Oldham Council in January 2024, and like a lot of the lead political sort of players in Oldham, you look into them, you think, you know, you have a look at the LinkedIn page, you have a look at the Facebook page, you do some digging, you find a thought. And, you know, I'm by nature, I've become cynical. You know, I look at people and think, why have they been employed? Who are they? Where's the connection? You know, are they genuine? Are they fraudsters? You know, and you're just sort of looking at them with a sort of, you know, a cynical eye. And I thought,
well, very often you can join the dots up and get the right result, can't you?
Yeah, well, I looked at Sarah Johnson. I thought, she seems to be the real deal, this lady, you know. And I was quite impressed with what I was reading, and I thought, might be light end of the tunnel with this girl. She seems to be a sharp cookie. She seems credible, And I thought, they've got somebody good on board finally. However, Sarah Johnson wasn't in the role very long before I started getting phone calls, as I get quite frequently, for the inner sanctum of Oldham Council, that she wasn't liking what she was seeing. And so when I looked at the accounts, it was shocking what she's put. She sort of put a resignation in pretty quick. She didn't even last a year. So Sarah Johnson, the financial director of Oldham Borough Council, she put resignation in, and Oldham Council, I think in a panic, made her work a notice, kind of forced her to work a notice, and then they were looking at trying to get the accounts signed off to 31st of March 2024, and I kept looking, month on month, they weren't signed off. And this was like ringing alarm bells, thinking, why are these not being signed off?
Yeah.
Why are they not being signed off? There's something going on here.
No auditing going on, nothing.
And so there's they've gone sort of press silence, they're sort of like, no one to answer any questions. I'm thinking, and I kept asking this question, what have we got in reserves as a council? Because if you're talking about overspending per month, and you look at what you got in reserves, and then you divide what you got in reserves by what you're overspending, that will give you a date when you're going to go bankrupt.
Right.
In any organisation.
Yeah, sure.
And when you overspend more than your income, sooner or later you're going to hit a brick wall and you're going to bankrupt. So I'm looking at this, and then when the accounts I got my hands on them last week, I dug into them. There's like 800 odd pages you've got to go through.
Oh, bloody hell.
So I did a podcast on it, and I isolated out sort of the significant points. Harry Catherall had signed them. And he's give his resignation and sort of fled the scene, so to speak. And he's at Tameside now, and good luck with him.
Oh, gosh, really?
So, and you look into Harry Catherall's sort of past. I mean, he was at St Helens, and they give him 160 grand, payoff. And then he were after, not doing such a good job there. And then he went to Blackburn. I think it's Blackburn and Darwin, and sold off, the council's assets, put the council tax up by the maximum amount, and, did a bunk from there. And then, lo and behold, we hadn't ended up with him. And I put my head in my hands and thought, how are these people who have got curriculum vitae of this nature, and when you look at sort of the credibility and what they've actually done elsewhere, how are they employable?
Well,
so
only by their fellow corrupt, surely.
So then, next news, he ends up at Oldham Council, and I put my head in my hands, and lo and behold, he's overseen, catastrophic losses of our accounts at Oldham.
Really?
He signed it, he's put the council tax up year on year on year, and then shot off to Tameside, and I'll be honest, I feel sorry for Tameside. Because
that's where we are right now.
Because I actually applied to be Chief Executive Officer of Oldham, and it was a genuine application. But I knew my application was tongue in cheek, because the first thing I would have done is audit the accounts, and I know they don't like somebody like me who's a managing director of a successful multi-million pound company auditing Oldham Council accounts, because I would go through them in fine detail and make sure there's no stone unturned.
I'm assuming you didn't get the job.
Well, again, with me being the person I am right now, which I kind of get cynical, I thought when the agency sort of contacted me, I thought, here we go, this will be a thing. But the actual lady who spoke to me, the agency, she said, I've read your curriculum vitae, and she said it's the only compliant one we've got for the application process. And she said, and it jumps off the page how passionate you are for Oldham Borough. I've never read anything like it. You really want to change Oldham Borough, and I do. I don't have financial incentives. I remember before the last general election, I was working up in Edinburgh with a project that was doing up there, and I was contacted by the Labour Party again, and they were asking me if I would take a senior position in admin within the Labour group. And I said, well, I'm actually on a 6-figure salary doing what I'm doing. I own my own business. I'm a successful businessman, and I've been for 40 odd years, Then they said, well, we don't see that as an obstacle. And I thought, am I being part of it? But I declined it, and TikTok have recently offered £37,000 if they got adverts on the TikTok thing. I can show you afterwards if you want to have a look at it.
Do it.
Again, I declined that. So, not really motivated by money. I don't wish that to sound vulgar or dismissive, because I know a lot of people have got a very, very serious financial problems.
Without a doubt,
which is why I would like to see people getting value for money at Oldham Council, and of course nationally, and we're not. We're being absolutely fleeced. Yeah. Look, going back to the accounts, Sarah Johnson, she's resigned and left. She signed them, resigned and left. A chap by Mr. Calso, the assistant financial director, he's resigned. He signed them, resigned and left. A guy called Paul Clifford, who was the chief economist at Oldham Council, he's signed them, resigned and left.
It's like a bloody mass exodus.
So it's like they're jumping the ship, and I'm thinking, let me just correct myself, I'm not too sure Paul Clifford did sign them or not. I know Mr. Kelso did, I know Harry Cathro did.
Still plenty of them have,
so I could be corrected on that one, on that point with Paul Clifford, but I do know he's resigned and left. And I thought, why are these people all resigning and leaving? And then I looked at the audit report, which you've got to get when I submit my accounts, I've got an independent auditor. They've got to sign my accounts off. And the auditors are a company in Manchester who are published. They won't give it an audit certificate, an authentication certificate. So at the moment, you've got accounts that are just an absolute shambles. And what Sarah Johnson wrote is that the manner in which Oldham Council is being run, which is what she's seen previous to her employment and during her employment, is unsustainable. Now that, from a finance director, would be ringing alarm bells with any company. Anybody who works in the private sector, if an accountant sort of said, this is the situation you're in, you'd be having serious problem. You'd be looking at it thinking, oh my God, we have got...
This is the day we're going to go bust, as you said
This
earlier,
is a massive problem. Now, to kind of emphasise the point, what Sarah Johnson put within those accounts with the reserves in 2010, 2011 were 120 million. And what the Oldham Council have done is to use these reserves to prop up all these crackpot schemes that they've embarked upon. None of them add up financially. All of them are flawed to hell. And we're now down to just over 50 million. And this is very important, we've got reserves of 50 million to the 31st of March 2024 without the auditors signing them off. So the auditors still won't give them an authentication certificate. So at very, very best, we've got 50 million in reserves. Now, since those 50 million in reserves in the same account move forward into the current financial year, which is 2024-2025, they've already borrowed another 29.5 million reserves. Now, previous to that, they'd said, we're going to start a committee in order not to sort of carry on like this, and that committee was led by the leader, which I'm presuming is Arun Shah, and that has failed catastrophically again, and they've had to borrow another 29.5 million. So we are going full steam ahead to an S114, which is a bankruptcy order, which is, for the people of Oldham, is going to be absolutely devastating. And the problem is, and this is what concerns me deeply, they don't care. They just don't care. And that really is the bottom. When people have said to me, what are you looking for in a candidate for Reform UK? The number one thing I'm looking for in any candidate, in any person, is, do you care? And they don't care. they've embarked on this scheme where, as an example, Ruth Shah said she's going to build 2,000 houses in Oldham, in Oldham Town Centre, on these 5 sites. And they've employed a management company called Muse Developments Limited. Muse Development Limited in 2024 said to build these units are going to cost you £200,000 per unit to build, because you've got to look at all these 5 sites, going back to what I said about Durka and Fitnell earlier. So across all these 5 sites, you've got to put stuff like gas, electric, water, sewerage, services, a lot of infrastructure to go in. Then you've got to build. Muse Developments, who are a subsidiary of Morgan Sindall, they know what they're doing, and they're turning around advising Oldham Council, look, these units are going to cost around about 200 grand each to actually deliver. They deliver the finished article in the town centre. The problem you've got is the finished article commercially in the town centre is worth £100,000. So for every unit you deliver, you're going to lose £100,000. And if you do 2,000 of them, that's a £200 million haul.
Yeah. It's just insane.
Now, if anybody tells you, look, this business plan you've got, it's a £200 million haul in it, you just sort of hold your hands up and say, hang on a minute, I want to step back from this. I might have to sort of eat a big lump of humble pie, hold my hands up and say, we're wrong, we need to sort this out.
Doable,
Not Labour run Oldham Council.
Crack
on. Crack on. What we're going to do is, we've just been given another 20 million of government money, of taxpayers' money. 5 million of that, what we'll do is we'll use it as a bung to Muse Developments to go through the process of houses they know that they've got a £200 million haul in. It gets worse, because I started digging out thinking, what on earth are they doing here? This is just...
There isn't a personal connection with Muse and these people in the council.
This is crazy. So I'm like, what are they doing? So... And you've got the same problem in Tameside, because I saw last night you've got a fantastic councillor here. His name escapes me right now. I'll look at it on my phone. It's a Tory councillor, I think, and he don't half call them out. But there's a festival down in Cannes at the moment. Now, Cannes is one of the most expensive places in Europe. South of France, it's the millionaires' playground.
I'm in the film industry. I'm full
So what have Oldham Council done? They bought some tickets to go to this festival at £3,000 a ticket.
What?
Now, I got phoned up from one of my insiders at Oldham Council. They said, Ruth Shah, our council leader, Emma Barton, who came from Wigan Council, who oversaw the purchase of a shopping centre there called the Galleries, which is a basket case shopping centre that wants millions spending on it. And I think the 5,000 people signed a petition over at Wigan Council saying this is just crazy. You're going to ruin the town centre. They bought that, and she bought it. And she was consultants called CBRE, a United States-owned company.
I'm familiar with CBRE.
CBRE, they're a consultancy company, a professional company outfit, but I think Wigan Council and CBRE, after them being paid millions, parted company after Emma Barton left. Yeah. So Emma Barton, she came to Oldham Council in January 2019, if my memory serves me well. And she came in as finance director at Oldham Council after leaving Wigan Council, and Wigan Council sort of then left with a basket case shopping centre that they've got to pay for. Now there's a company called Kennedy Wilson. Kennedy Wilson are a Beverly Hills based shopping centre company that operate globally. They are a multi-billion pound company.
Sorry about this,
so Kennedy Wilson, United States, Beverly Hills, multi-billion pound company. They owned a shopping centre in Oldham called Spindles. Spindles. It was falling to rack and ruin. It had a value of probably a quid. I don't even remember British Home Stores owned by Philip Green. It got sold for a quid. The reason it got sold and valued at £1 is because the ongoing costs of it were in excess of what it was worth. You buy something, you take on all the liabilities. Kennedy Wilson had been trying to find somebody stupid enough, thick enough, and they were looking for the village idiot to buy it. And along comes into the fray with his cape on was Captain Sensible, which is our previous council leader called Sean Fielding, the boy wonder. And his curriculum vitae was a shelf stacker at Tesco's at Filsworth.
Nothing wrong with doing that for a job, by the way.
No, absolutely not. But it doesn't really give you the credentials to take, make decisions that's going to cost your taxpayers £100 million.
No, absolutely.
So along comes Sean Fielding. Oh, it's an absolute bargain. Pays £9.5 million for this shopping centre that, everyone sort of in the right mind would think you are devoid of any common sense. You've got no you wouldn't put him the man in charge of a sweet shop. He's skedaddled over to Bolton after being voted out, after saying that child sex exploitation in Oldham were barefaced lies. We'll come on to it later on. But anyway,
I do want to ask about that. Yeah.
Emma Barton, she sort of become the financial director. She's got promoted up. I think she's deputy chair now of deputy CEO of Oldham Council. She's on £145,000 a year. My sources told me yesterday, the day before, that Emma Barton, Aruj Shah, so it's our council leader, and Emma Barton have gone to Cannes with a lady by the name of Shelley Kipling. Now, Shelley Kipling was a comms employee at Oldham Council. And she was partly responsible for producing a newspaper that's just full of Labour propaganda. It's absolute garbage. Most people just receive it in the letterbox and just throw it in the bin because it's just garbage telling you how great Labour Council are doing. Right. When they absolutely reverse. You look at the accounts, and I'll tell you what they're doing. They're blowing £100 million in the accounts from 2010 to 2025. So anybody who blows that money is just fiscal lunatic.
So they're having a jolly up on the.
So there's three of them.
And everybody's money.
So Shelley Kipling, I don't know what her credentials are and what her credibility is to be CEO. Going back to when I applied for CEO, I understand that it was only the lady at the agency was quite complimentary. Actually, she said, I think your CV is fantastic. It's the only compliant, the only credible one we've got. She then rang me up on the Friday night and said that Oldham Council had been in touch, asked them where they were up to with the CVs and applications. Were informed mine were the only compliant one and called halt to that particular proceedings. So they went running back into the arms of Harry Cathro, who, and what I'd inadvertently done, I'd passed him the golden baton, where he said, right, I want to work part-time, I want to be able to zoom in, and I want 105 grand for working part-time. And so the thing was, their options were, at the time, continue with Harry Cathro or take me on board. I don't think they wanted me on board.
No, clearly they didn't, yeah.
So when the applications came through again on this to be CEO, a lot of people contacted me. I would say in excess of 100 people in Oldham Borough were asking me to apply to be the new CEO. Yeah. And I knew it would just, it would, again, like standing as an independent in a general election, it would be purely symbolic. Yeah, I didn't particularly want to waste my time. But I did find out that there was two people who did apply. And I was, again, in my contacts within Oldham Council, said that, one of them in particular was quite credible. I won't give his name out. However, there was two applied. In the meetings that were attended by a number of people, and I've got to be careful what I say here, but I got a phone call up after that meeting that Aruj Shah said, regardless of the curriculum vitae or the credibility of the applicants for the CEO, I've already made my decision it's going to be Shelley Kipling. So whoever would have applied wouldn't have got the job, according to the source I had.
And is it his decision solely?
Pardon?
He could just make that decision.
Aruj Shah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a cabinet member there's 9 in the cabinet of Oldham Council, but that was the information I'd fed back to me. By all means, I'd invite Oldham Council to try and deny it, and if not, tell us the truth. Because going back to sort of the only time politicians tell the truth is when they call one another liars.
It stinks to high heaven.
Absolutely stinks to high heaven. So then the next news, Shelley Kipling gets promoted to CEO of Oldham Council on £200,000 a year.
Right.
So you've got Shelley Kipling on £200,000 a year. You have got Emma Barton on £145,000 a year, and then you've got Aruj Shah, who, according to reports I've received, have now gone off to Cannes, and the tickets are £3,000 each. And the council leader at Tameside's there as well. Now,
Is that Eleanor?
yeah,
Eleanor Wills?
yeah, I'll let me just see if I can find it for you, because again, your chap at Tameside, I'll see if I can find him. Right, the guy's called Councillor Liam Billington.
Ah, yeah. I've heard
Right.
Has he not just been suspended?
I don't know.
Have I got the wrong guy? I don't know.
This is Liam Billington on X. He's put, "Wish you were here. Councillor Eleanor Wills, the highest paid council leader in Greater Manchester, has just jetted off to Cannes on taxpayers' expense. Tameside has the lowest growth of any borough. Only last week she was whinging that she makes great sacrifices as a leader. I doubt residents of the borough will be happy seeing councillors flying off to elitist conferences costing £2,750 a ticket." That's the lowest price one. There's a 3,300 one. When the council tax has just gone up by the maximum amount, and then it shows a picture of her there, and that's on X. So I then looked into sort of Oldham Council, and I looked into this link that they had, and on page 10 of that link, right at the bottom in tiny letters, it said Oldham Council will be attending Cannes. So I don't think they wanted me really to sort of expose what they were doing. Now, if Emma Barton and Shelley Kipling and Aruj Shah are not going, which again, I'll caveat that that's what I got told they were going,
Right.
I will hold my hands up and say, please tell us who are, because you've said you are going.
Somebody is.
Somebody is, because you've said you are. So who's going? If it's not Aruj Shah, Emma Barton and Shelley Kipling, who is? Now then, we get into sort of deeper water here, because there's a lady who was in charge of Birmingham Council, one of the senior executives in Birmingham Council. Obviously, Birmingham Council just filed for an S114 bankruptcy order, and they're in a catastrophic mess down in Birmingham and their accounts have been a train crash. So the lady who was involved in that was called Fiona Greenway. The fact we lost Sarah Johnson, who said, we've got a serious problem, and she's put it in the accounts in Oldham, and I published it. So I just looked on just now. It said, it's just racking up like hell. It's like 92,000 views, the one I put up yesterday. And Sarah Johnson sounded the alarm bell. So who have we got to come to save us? You won't guess, Fiona Greenway from Birmingham. So the reports I've had is that Fiona Greenway from Birmingham has arrived at Oldham Council. This is like a merry-go-round, this, because it's like Harry Catherall going to Tameside.
It started off unbelievable and got progressively worse.
Yeah, and so Fiona Greenway arrives at Oldham, and they put a link up, initially offering £1,000 a day, that, according to reports, has gone up to £1,500 a day for a finance director, an interim finance director, which usually turns into permanent. Well, £1,500 a day is £7,500 a week, and if my mathematics is right, that's £390,000 a year.
It is thereabouts.
Yeah, for a person who's been rewarded for failure, which if you're in the private sector, you'd be unemployable. You're in the public sector, we'll put your wages up, we'll give you more. Now, I'd like it confirmed by Oldham Council. Is Fiona Greenway going to relocate to Oldham, or is she getting a $390,000 a year zooming in?
From Birmingham.
And the thing is,
I'm in the wrong frigging job here, mate.
on the zooming in sort of, why couldn't they zoom into Cannes?
Well, yeah.
Because, I'd imagine someone funny old thing, I bet they don't report sick before they go into Cannes. I don't feel so well today, I'm not coming in, but I still want my wages. Well, I bet they didn't.
You old cynic, you.
Yeah. Now, the thing is that you've got in Cannes, you're going to have some of the massive players, some big players. And I work with a lot of these because I work in the construction industry. That's my job.
Yeah.
I'll be going up into when I'm going on holiday shortly. When I have a brief break. And then I'm going to be up in Scotland, and I'll be meeting sort of companies. I won't mention them because it'd be it wouldn't be. But the companies I'm dealing with are multi-billion-pound companies. I've dealt with them, all my career, and my role at the company is primarily on procurement. And you've got these people are sharp cookies. You're dealing with the elite, and you're dealing with people who they want to be dealing with professionals. When you go to them, you've got to say, "Oh, this is a service we offer. This is why we want you to use us. This is our credentials. These are previous things we've done in the past. To show we can do it. And these are our testimonials to show we can do it." When they meet the likes of Tameside council leader or Oldham council leader, turn up at Cans, what credentials have you got? What's your testimonials? Where's your proven track record? They'll just laugh at them.
Yeah, of course.
They'll be shirked away from, because people at the higher echelons of the construction industry, they've no time for fools. And they've no time for wasting their time.
I've worked in the industry myself.
And getting involved with people like that. I think that in the delusional minds of the council, that they think they're thinking somebody is going to turn up and wave the 200 million shortfall at them, and unfortunately it doesn't work like that.
Not quite, no.
And they really need a big dose of reality, because right now, according to the latest published council figures in Oldham, we've got 20.5 million left in reserves. They're on about in Oldham Bury, this eco centre they're going. I'm like, good grief. It just seems to be, you're just limping from one chaotic mess into another. Nothing they do adds up. Every single time they get involved in it, like the Spindles fiasco. They bought it, then they found out the roof was needed 10 million quid spending on it. Then they found a culvert underneath Spindles that they need to address.
Oh, Christ,
then they give Wilmot Dixon an order, I think 68 million, just for one section of it. And then the fact that they couldn't get one business partner across all the UK to go. They announced in that rag that I'm sure Shelley Kipling was part of, we're going to self-deliver, which basically means we've failed to get one partner and we're going to use taxpayers' money to deliver it. So when you look at the actual hemorrhaging of the money, when you look between 2010, 2020 to 2020-21 to 2024-25, they've blown 100 million. How much have they spent on Spindles? About 100 million. And the thing is, it will never ever pay. It will never pay the money back to the people of Oldham. So that will be a constant drain on taxpayers' money in Oldham. But the boy wonder, who said it was an absolute bargain, skedaddled over to, I think he's at Bolton now. And like I said, God help him there with that guy, in the council chambers at Bolton.
So what's the plan, Paul, to stop this and turn it around?
I mean, the plan is, and people keep saying to me, what can we do? What can we do? Well, there's only one way, and we nearly got there when we did it with the independents. We reduced them down to 27 out of 60, so they were in a minority. But unfortunately, 4 independents sort of jumped on board with them and propped them up. So in Oldham, the next elections aren't May 2026. Whether or not our council will survive till then, as in not go bankrupt before then, I think that's we're on shaky ground. We're on very, very financial shaky ground. And other things are coming into play as well. Last week I did a podcast basically about the mobility allowance in Oldham. And of course I've had quite a lot of phone calls where people are registering sort of in Oldham the allegation, and it is only an allegation, that they're getting registered as being disabled. They're putting an application to get mobility allowance. That mobility allowance is buying Mercedes supercars, BMWs, Audis.
Yeah, I've heard this. Yeah.
And they're also buying. There are taxi drivers who are relaying to some of the customers that the cars that they're using for taxis, are actually part and parcel of this mobility allowance. So
they're very blasé about it. They just talk about it.
Yeah.
I was a taxi driver for 8 years.
So I'm getting taxi drivers ringing me up and saying they're getting, the allowance for, and you're looking around Oldham and thinking, where are all these new cars coming from? Yeah. So what I did, just again, this is sort of trying to get you make the best use of your time. I thought, I wonder how much they're spending on transport, Oldham Council. So all I did, I opened up Oldham Council spending records. I looked at the spending records for October 2024, November 2021, December 2024. I had a quick glance at them. 3 months, how much has Oldham Council spent on taxis, on vehicles and transport in 3 months?
I couldn't even begin to guess.
1.8 million.
What?
1.8 million.
Are you kidding me?
Nope. No, and I published it.
And what's the response
1.8 million. Well, the thing is, they're getting now, so they're so brazen with it. I mean, who would publish accounts that shows they've blown 100 million in just under 5 years, and then we're swanning off to cans. Oh, by the way, we just put your council tax up by the maximum amount. How brazen's that?
They must feel untouchable.
They are. I mean, at the moment, they are untouchable. And this is where I'm like thinking, the only way that we can address this...
The ballot box, isn't it?
This is the ballot box.
It's got to be,
and people constantly say, what can we do? And I said the same answer to everybody. Vote. We are going to be putting up 20 candidates for Reform UK in Oldham.
Right.
Some of those areas in Oldham are virtually unwinnable. And they're unwinnable because of allegations which, I've had numerous sort of approaches in regards to voter fraud. Right. And where you look at the areas which are unwinnable, the turnout in those areas is like nearly 90%.
Why are they unwinnable, though?
Pardon?
Why are they unwinnable?
Right, well, if you get an area, as an example, Wornath Ward,
right,
the Labour Party have a majority there of around about 2,000, which in a local ward, a majority of, you're on about overturning those 2,000. Now, I've had, there was a lady rung me who lived in Coppice, an Asian lady, and she said at polling time, when they post the polling cards through the doors, go and knock on your door and ask for your polling card.
Who does?
The people who are associated with the Labour Party group. And she said, I'll film them for you if you wish. And they
hang on. Sorry, mate. They're knocking on people's doors.
They're knocking,
asking for their polling card.
Asking for the polling card.
Now, they're asking or telling?
Telling. They're asking under threat.
That has to be stopped.
It's not. I mean, the thing is, there is no appetite to stop it. So what she said is, what I'll do, Paul, I'll video them and I'll send the video. And I said, if they're obtaining it by menace and these people are as serious as you're telling me that, I publish a lot of stuff. If I put that up and they find out it's her, what will happen to her husband or her children?
Yeah. So
at
some point, someone's got to make a stand.
You're in a catch-22 situation. What happens is you'll get five people, chaps who walk around knocking on doors, follow the postman, give you your polling card, and obtain it under menace. Next news, they've got 300 or 400 of them, and they fill them all in. Now, myself and Paul Stevenson, as deputy chair of the Reform UK in Oldham, we were at the general election when Debbie Abrams got elected in 2019. I think it was December the 12th. It looked like it was neck and neck. There was a Tory. It looked like it was going to win, and it was getting very, very close. Next news, this whopping big envelopes turn up from these wards that are specific to Labour and areas specific to Alexandra Ward, St Mary's Ward, Wornath Ward. These are just massive Labour followers, and they poured all these polling cards onto the table, and we were stood there looking at them. They were all ticked, not X. They were all ticked with the same pen.
Right.
So Paul Stevenson said, well, them are spoiled ballot papers. And then the guy, the Electoral Commission, and Debbie Abrams nearly knocked him over and said, no, according to the rules, if there's a clear indication as to who that who they're voting for. That's allowed under electoral rules. And she was right. It is. That's true. So I turned round and just said, you'd think they'd use a different pen. Because there's 4,000 of them. So there's just it's just you look at it and
so
it's
someone
just
sat there going,
tick, 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 and we were looking at them. And I said to Paul Stevens, I turned around to him and I spoke to the electoral, the counter. I said, that is ridiculous. Why isn't somebody not looking into this?
Why isn't it not on mainstream news, for example?
Well, if you actually have a look if you Google, if you get on your, I'd encourage people who are watching this podcast that if you Google election fraud hotspots in the UK, they got Oldham's number 15, I think, 14 or 15.
Well, I mean, from the outside looking in, I'm South Manchester, so I'm completely opposite to Oldham.
You live in the posh bit there.
I live in the posh bit. Hence the double barrel surname.
I mean, I'm in the best of company.
Well, you like to say. Forgive me for saying it this way, from the outside looking in, if you say Oldham to someone like me, and I just think it's a big Muslim area.
Yeah.
And very little else, really. I remember the thing about the old man in the park years ago that was attacked.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, and this is where you got to be very careful because, I know a lot of Muslims. I deal with them every single day of my life.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of very good Muslims,
Oh, 100%.
And I had a conversation recently with one of the councillors, and we're about child sex exploitation. And when you look at the Office of National Statistics in Oldham, it says there's 250,000 people in Oldham, probably a lot more now. Yeah. But let's take this, my forte is, mathematics, so the accounts and stuff like that. But let's take this, from the 250,000 people. Yeah. If you say 1% of them are paedophiles, beasts, monsters, people who we should be sort of trying to get rid and root out. Yeah. Say 1%, that's 2,500. Yeah. So let's just say there's 2,500. Now, I don't think there is 2,500. I think there's a lot, but I don't think it's 2,500. Right. But let's look at that as a demograph. That's 1%. And this is where you've got to be very, very careful because the councillor I spoke to, and I won't name him, he said in Muslim countries we'd hang them. We would castrate them.
Well, I lived in a Muslim country for 2.5 years.
He was furious and he said, we don't want this to carry on. And there are a lot have got that opinion. Just like that lady who said she would send me the video of the postal fraud and the collecting cards.
Ballot card, yeah.
The problem a lot of the Muslims have got, and there are a lot of good ones. There really are a lot of good ones. A lot of people said there's not. There are. I'd argue that point. There are a lot of good ones. If they turn around and say, see that guy who lives 5 doors up from me, he's involved of gang rape and grooming children, giving them heroin, giving them cocaine, and raping them and pimping them out. What do you think will happen to that person in that community?
Oh, they'd get absolutely smashed out of the place.
And the first thing the police say is, right, will you stand up as a witness against that person?
And if they do, they've got to leave.
Yeah, so people accuse them saying, why don't they speak up? Yeah. Well, the thing is what they did, they sent an email. And this was the Muslim community sent an email to Jim McMahon and to the BBC. And I got a copy of that email. Yeah. And they said, there is a grooming gang problem in Oldham.
Yeah. So why isn't anybody shouting? I mean, Tommy Robinson did. And look where he is.
Yeah, I mean,
no one can tell me that isn't connected because it is.
I mean, the thing is, where you're looking like from Oldham's point of view, when Sean Fielding stood up in the council chambers, got to bear in mind that the Muslim areas where I've just said they're tipping envelopes full of tick polling cards out of.
Right, okay.
Yeah, okay. Them areas are propping up the Labour Council in Oldham.
I didn't realise that was a connection that I'd just made by accident.
So when I say those areas that are just Labour strongholds, those are what are propping up Labour Council. So Sean Fielding stood up in Oldham Council, said it's all barefaced lies. This grooming doesn't exist. About a week after that, I got a knock on the door. I was sat at home. Dogs barking, and I thought, who's at the door? So I opened the door, and this chap stood there. I didn't know him from Adam. He introduced himself as a police officer, off-duty police officer.
Off-duty police officer.
No. After Sean Fielding had said that that it was barefaced lies that would grooming gangs in Oldham.
Yeah.
There's no proof. Well, as I said, just over a week afterwards, I got a knock on my door. Went to the door, plainclothes police officer, and he passed me. He said, "Paul," he said, "I've been following you on things. If I get caught talking to you, I get sacked."
What?
He said, "Have a look at Operation Augusta." He said, "Operation Augusta," he said, "we arrested loads of them." He said, "We had about 90, thereabouts, about 800 cases." Right. He said, "and it were dropped." So we got told to drop it. And there was a load of people sort of like resigned in the aftermath of Operation Augusta. He said, "I've got off my computer here," he said, 1,753 cases from 2020 to 2024. And he said, and he passed me. He said, "I can't give you the files for obvious reasons, but here's a summary." So it tells you year on year how many victims there were. He said, "Got to bear in mind," he said, "them are the ones that have come forward that we know about." Now, when they had the supposed, which was absolutely farcical, the independent investigation to child sex exploitation in Oldham, do you know how many of them 1,753 victims they interviewed? No. Have a guess.
None.
None. You're right.
Seriously?
Seriously.
I was taking the piss then.
No, yeah.
None.
Oh. They didn't interview one. So
that's why.
So it was a farce. It was a complete cover-up. So a lot of people turned up, a lot of public turned up, and they had placards covered up. Now the people who had placards covered up some of them were visited afterwards at their home and served with restraining orders saying that they weren't allowed to attend council or public meetings again. A chap, quite a local activist, a guy called Warren Bates, who's no longer with us. He was an activist, and he was 80-odd-year-old. They had burly security guards saying you can't come in. He was an ex-councillor. And because he was holding them to account and saying, "Look, I've got files on this," showing exactly what's gone on in our town, and you're just lying.
Paul, this is terrible.
So there was a guy called Detective Inspector David Sutcliffe. Detective Inspector David Sutcliffe. So he worked very high echelons within Greater Manchester Police.
Yeah.
And he's put an open letter out there, and he said that Andy Burnham is a liar and a coward. Andy Burnham is a liar and a coward. And David Sutcliffe has said this. Now, I don't know Andy Burnham. I've met him twice. So I sponsored a netball match down at Manchester, and the sponsors were supposed to be sat, the VIP things, and they put me sat next to Andy Burnham. I said, "Look, I don't want to be sat there tonight. I want to sort of just enjoy the night. I don't want to be sat with Mr. Burnham. I've no time for the man."
Yeah.
But David Sutcliffe said he's a liar and a coward. And he said to him, "Look, by all means, I'll debate with you in an open forum like this what you knew and what you knew at the time." Going back to the Oldham child sex exploitation investigation, there was a girl that was originally she used a pseudonym, Sophie, and then she later come out as Samantha. Maggie Oliver bypassed Oldham Council, bypassed the police, and just took this girl straight to Malcolm Newsom and Gary Ridgway, who were carrying out this supposed independent investigation. It was a farce. Yeah. It was absolute whitewash. Total whitewash. So, only because Maggie Oliver bypassed the council, bypassed the police, and just took this one person straight to Malcolm Newsom and Gary Ridgway, who were carrying out this report, was her testimony sort of heard. And that testimony ended up on national news. That was one of them. One. Now, that girl had gone in Oldham Police Station. She was 12 years old. And she said she'd been molested and she'd been raped. The police poo-pooed her, told her to go away. Pakistani driver took her back to an house, and 5 men gang raped her. She then
Right.
got out of that house, tried to flag another taxi down, got took to another house, with gang raped again. That girl.
Is this just Oldham you're talking
This
about?
is Oldham,
We've got
yeah.
Telford and
So,
Rotherham.
yeah. Oldham will knock Telford and knock Rotherham into the weeds for the actual how many offences are caused. Now, bear in mind, as that police officer showed me and passed it to me, and I've published it, 1,753. That's in a 5-year period. Now, you take that as an average, and then you say, well, what was it been over a 40-year?
Yeah.
If they know about 1,753 in a 5-year period, what do they know in a 40-year period? Because it's on an industrial scale.
Yeah,
I met a girl, and she rang me up out the blue. Again, I got sort of phoned up, and this lady said that her husband didn't know that she was a grooming gang victim. And her children don't know, and the reason she doesn't want to testify is that she doesn't want to put her husband and her children through the shame.
Or at risk even.
And so I met her for a coffee, and I sat down with her, and she told me she was at council school in Oldham, and she said that there was a 15-year-old Pakistani boy when she was 12, showered her with gifts, she paid her a lot of attention, made her feel desired, made her feel loved, all the emotions that every single person on the planet wants to feel.
Yeah.
And she started, going out in a relationship, and she'd been going out within like 2 or 3 months, and then he introduced her to drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, and so on, and the drugs got heavier, and she ended up on heroin. Next news, he's asking her if she'd sleep with his cousin, and she declined, and then he accused her of being Islamophobic and racist.
What?
So eventually she slept with his cousin, and then that developed into sleeping with much older men, and then she was pimped out. And from the age of 12 years to about 17 years, she was on heroin, and she said on some occasions she'd have as many as 12 men a day.
So she's a message. She meant it.
And she burst into tears when she was speaking to me, and put her head in her hands, and she said, "My husband deserves somebody better than me."
Oh my days!
I put my arm round her, and I just said, and I looked at that and thought, how can these politicians, allow this to carry on?
How they sleep at night is beyond me.
It is, and like when going back to what Cyril Smith's victim said to me, I felt like vomiting when he explained to me what Cyril Smith made him do. And yet we've got these politicians who are just hell bent at all costs to cover it up. Hell bent. Power, I think, is the underlying motive.
They're literally letting our kids get smashed.
Yeah. Now,
in every way.
Yeah, and it just is just so terribly tragic. I'm just looking for something here. I found it right. Now then, I'll read this out. And this was read out and published on a YouTube clip by Nazir Afzal, who was a former chief prosecutor for the northwest of England, in October 2018. And I'll paraphrase it, unedited it, has he read it out. And this is from Nazir Afzal. In 2008, Home Office sent a circular to all police forces saying, as far as these young girls who are being exploited in towns and cities, we believe they've made an informed choice about their sexual behaviour, and therefore it is not for you, police officers, to get involved in.
They've made an informed choice at 12?
Yes.
And legally they can't.
So Nazir Afzal outed that, and he said there'd been a reporting restriction on it. My question was, and what the immediate thing that sprung to mind is, who's put a reporting restriction on it and why?
Yeah, why?
Because if that was sent out to all the police forces in 2008, that was under the Labour government with Gordon Brown. Now, who was a minister in that Labour government? Somebody local. Think of a mayor. Local in Greater Manchester.
Oh God, not Mr. Burnham.
Oh my goodness, knock me down with a feather. So Andy Burnham was a minister in that Labour government. Now, Nazir Afzal published that circular went out to all the police forces across the UK. That email and that circular condemn tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of victims to the fate.
Because it's basically have that sort of power though to do that.
Because it's basically carte blanche sort of blanket. Don't get involved. So the police are getting this information from the government not to do it. Now here's the thing. I'm thinking, well, I've got to give Andy Burnham the benefit of the doubt. He might not have known about it. So hold your hands up. Give the guy the benefit of the doubt.
So ask him,
but Andy Burnham, since becoming Mayor of Manchester, part of the role the Mayor of Manchester's got is you become the Chief Commissioner of Greater Manchester Police. So the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police is answerable to Andy Burnham. So, in my mind, it would be inconceivable that if the Chief Constable is answerable to Andy Burnham, that he couldn't have known about that circuit.
He must have known, or at least somebody within his
and my
team.
thoughts are turning, well, why is he not spoken out about it? What's happened with Operation Augusta? Maggie Oliver, who's been pioneering for child sex exploitation, I don't know where she gets the energy from, to be honest, but she's been absolutely pioneering, and she's sort of, she's not been well funded, not been well supported. And she's been in a dogfight trying to support these victims, and she's overwhelmed. Some of the victims have said, and she weren't right, let her out. I mean, it's the volume that one person's got to deal with. It's like when I was saying earlier, when you were saying, what do I think about Rupert Law, and I just said, look, when I became interim chair of Reform in Oldham, my head was buried in stuff. And the number of emails and messages I were getting, and still do, it gets overwhelming. And then you get people saying, "Well, have you not answered my email?" And you're thinking, I'm getting sort of like hundreds of emails, and so it's you try your best, but
until you've experienced that. I've experienced that for a very different reason in the past. And I was getting about 2,000 a day. And it was just. It was just too much.
And Maggie Oliver, honestly, that woman, if anybody should be canonised, it should be that woman. She's been an absolute saint, what she's done, and she's thrown herself. I mean,
have you got contact with her? Can we get her on here?
I think another person you could get on here is probably Debbie Barrett-Cole. I mean, a lot of people take credit for what Debbie Barrett-Cole did. Debbie Barrett-Cole on the 12th of November 2019. Having spent probably about 18 months trying to go through the correct channels at Oldham Council, and just kept getting blocked, and we're not answering that. And what the public speakers, they're just chopping them down. In the end, I think in exasperation, Debbie Barrett-Cole walked into the chambers on the 12th of November 2019 in Oldham Council chambers. Now, you've got to bear in mind, when they broadcast from Oldham Council chambers, about 50 odd watching, maybe 60. Because they just talk drivel half the time. They just talk about how much they can waste our money most of the time. I think last week one of them were fast asleep, and I published that. I think that had 15,000 views. But the thing,
we need a Dennis Skinner. That's what we need.
Oh dear me! But the thing is, you get about 50, 60 people might be viewing it. So Debbie Barrett-Cole stood in there, and she stood up, and she would not sit down. And she told them all what were going on, who were involved, pointing everybody out. They kept asking her to shut down, and she wouldn't. She then, please come, telling her to sit down and shut up. She wouldn't. She got 56,000 views in that one. And that, regardless of what anybody else, including myself or anybody else, she started the ball rolling. That's when it's really punched through into the everybody's psyche. It was Debbie Barrett-Cole who did it. So Debbie Barrett-Cole was in close liaison with a lot of the victims. I believe she's had victims living with her.
I want her on there. Watching. Come on.
And Debbie Barrett-Cole is in. She's in contact with Maggie Oliver. She got threatened with kidnap and rape for doing what she'd done. And she was basically run out of town. So she's now had to leave Oldham because of the threats that she's received.
But you're not going to say, obviously.
It's pretty sad that you speak out about these things, and then go back to the point. There are a lot of Muslims that would speak out, but they're in fear. They're frightened.
Of course they are.
So, you know, if they thought the police were going to back them up and the politicians were going to back them up, I'm pretty sure they'd do something.
I've spoken to a lot of my friends are Iranian. I lived in Iran for a couple of years, 2.5 years or so.
I think
and I've asked them, and they say these people are giving Islam a bad name.
Yeah, well, in Pakistan, they've opened 1,000 courts since 2019 dealing with child sex exploitation and sex offences.
Wow.
And if you get caught in Pakistan...
Oh, it's Sharia law, isn't it?
It's 20 years to death sentence.
Yeah, with
and if you get caught with children and grooming children, it's death sentence. That's in Pakistan.
Yeah. Would you vote for that here, Paul?
Yes.
So would I.
Yeah, I'd vote for it.
So would I.
I think anybody who, the sentences they're getting are disgusting.
I mean,
and the reason they're disgusting. I mean, Amanda Chatterton, our ex-council leader, stood up in the council chambers, and said, "You can't say it's destroyed their lives." That is what she said.
What?
You can't say it's destroyed their lives. And the thing is, I kept a record of it. If you try and get it off Oldham Council site now, it's disappeared. But I've still got it. So if they deny it, I'll just stick it up there.
Yeah.
But it's there. You can't say it's destroyed that. There was a sadly young girl in Manchester, a part of the Operation Augusta. She was injected with heroin, gang raped, and died. And again, you got Shabir Ahmed, who was part of the grooming gang, one of the main players, who was did the most despicable, vile, evil things to his victims. Was employed by Oldham Council as a welfare officer.
Oh my God!
For 8 years. And trying to get to the bottom of who give Shabir Ahmed a reference is like nailing jelly to a wall.
Where is he now?
In prison. But not for long. But the thing is, when you target children, and like that 12-year-old child who's now a woman and married with kids, you've sentenced them to a life sentence.
Yeah.
The effect it has on them is with them for life.
Of course it is.
They've got anxiety, they've got stress, even suicidal.
Massive
they've got very low self-esteem. They shouldn't have, by the way. They have been manipulated, groomed, abused.
Part of the grooming process is to make them feel responsible for it.
Absolutely. And the thing is, the people that do that, in my mind, if they get anything less than 25 years, they've been let off.
Yeah, I agree.
Anything less. It should be minimum 25 years. And for the worst cases, never see the light of day again.
Yeah.
But it should be minimum 25 years for raping children and grooming children.
I've had a debate in the past where I was shouted down a little bit on Facebook, of all places, and once at an actual meeting where I believe you've got to differentiate the sentence between murder and rape, whether it's a child or not, because we all have the same feeling of disgust when we hear what goes on, and we don't even want the graphic details half the time. But for me, if the sentences are exactly the same, you're incentivising the perpetrator to go on and kill them. Yeah. Because if they've sexually abused them, I didn't want to use the word only. Yeah. If that's the crime they've committed, sexual abuse, but they're still alive, there has to be a differentiator in the sentence to save their lives. Yeah. Now, some people will come back to me and say, well, they don't even want their lives anymore. No, but they do, actually.
Yeah,
they're still alive, aren't they?
The thing is, at the moment, we have had a catastrophic failure of dealing with this issue because of light sentences. There's no deterrent.
Yeah, there has to be a heavy sentence, but it can't be the same as murder.
Yeah.
Or they'll kill them.
Yeah. I suppose you've got a good point there. But I
mean,
you've got a good point, Phil. And the thing is, it raises the emotions in me so much because I've
got sons and daughters.
I've had a lot of the victims contact me, and there's been occasion when I've been sort of my wife and I have been in bed, and we've got this screen that comes down from the ceiling. Watching it, so I've been.
You should be in South Manchester.
Yeah, I know. I should be in South Manchester. So I just shot myself in the foot a bit there somewhere. And but we're watching film, and then my phone a bit side of my bed, a bit buzzing away, and I answer my phone, and then the messages are coming through, and you get people messaging me at sort of midnight and 1 o'clock, and Jill, my wife, has said, "Look, turn that phone off." Yeah. Because it's just non-stop. I mean, one weekend I think I got about 600.
It's just
what they tell you is something that is probably worse than a script for a horror story on a scale that
stranger than fiction.
It's as bad as it gets. It's ringing now, sort of thing.
I've got two questions before we finish, if I may.
Yeah.
We're going to have to wrap it up soon.
Yeah.
First one is Tommy Robinson.
Yeah.
Should he be welcomed by reform or not? According to Nigel Farage, not.
Well, the thing is with Tommy Robinson, he's very much his own man. And I don't think Tommy Robinson particularly would agree of wanting to be in a political party. I think he's got his own path that he's
a bit too
taken.
militant, do you think?
I don't know whether it's a case of militant. It's just it's like oil and water. What Nigel Farage is doing is running a main political party, and Tommy Robinson's never been involved in anything like that.
He doesn't want it to become a Sinn Féin type party, does
it? The thing is, it's sort of when I've looked at sort of what Tommy Robinson has done, he's taken a particular path where he's made decisions in his life. He's bankrupt.
He's got some bottles.
He's got some, but he's bankrupt.
Yeah.
He's in prison. His life's in danger. His children are sort of in hiding.
Yeah.
And you've got to say, it's like, we've seen where that path takes you. The path that Tommy Robinson took. You see what the end result, where he is.
Yeah.
And you've got to ask your question. We already know where that path takes you.
So you take a different